You beautiful and amazing human beings, welcome back to the We Are Change News Show, a show that talks about all the news that you're not supposed to know about. And that's why in this particular video, we are going to be talking about the history as well as the current use of crying children used for propaganda purposes, which of course is connected to the latest climate change protests happening right now in Washington, D.C. We're going to get into the latest developments dealing with Iran and ask the question if Donald Trump actually prevented a war. We're also going to be talking about the egregious and insane case of Jeffrey Epstein, with more developments that are making this case even more egregious, even more insane, and just infuriating to cover. That, plus a lot more on this independent media broadcast that is provided by you. You getting involved and supporting us in many ways, one of which is just simply buying a t-shirt, which allows us to do these free videos for you, and potentially could wake up some NPCs in the Matrix. And starting off today's video, I really wanted to focus on the story that everyone is talking about, that of course the mainstream media is promoting, and that is the speech that a 16-year-old Greta Thunberg, sorry I can't say her name, Thunberg, gave at the UN Climate Summit in New York City, where she took to the stage in a very emotional plea, talking about climate change and mass extinction, looking at the crowd and saying, "How dare you?" And of course, this video is making the rounds, and everyone is talking about it. Now, even if you know just a little bit about how PR works, or even if you know someone who is a professional speaker, they know that evoking emotion, especially the one of crying, is an extremely powerful one that sells a bigger agenda, that is able to make your speech and your talking points more memorable. And this is why some people are being skeptical of this very young activist, but honestly, personally, it just makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable seeing such a young person used to kind of push this agenda. And of course, this is not the first time that a crying child was used to sell an agenda, as exposed during the first Gulf War, how a New York-based PR firm that was hired for $10.7 million to devise a campaign to win American support for the Gulf War actively found and trained a young girl to lie on American national television, which of course the mainstream media gobbled up and promoted without questioning, about how the Iraqi military stormed to a Kuwaiti hospital and viciously killed babies, throwing them out of incubators, letting them die on the cold floor. An incident that never happened. But yet, the American public, after watching it on the mainstream media that put it out without questioning it, was bought and sold on the idea of the Gulf War, which ultimately was all the public support needed to launch it. So when it comes to crying children promoted by mainstream media, I am extremely skeptical of this. Now, this speech is also correlated with a new lawsuit by this child, Greta Thunberg, and 15 other young children that are filing what some in the media are calling a potentially world-changing lawsuit. And Greta and 15 other young children are suing 5 countries: Argentina, Brazil, France, Germany, and Turkey. It's very interesting to see those countries being sued by Greta, since some of them have been making very big political and economic moves against carbon emission. And seeing climate change seen as a Western problem is really perplexing, since of course developing nations along with China and India are the ones who are responsible for most of the pollution, especially when it comes to the pollution of the ocean. And in the Western world, it is the U.S. military-industrial complex that is the largest, quote, polluter and carbon emitter. So not seeing any of these issues addressed, seeing Obama being a major promoter of this when he was a fervent supporter of the military-industrial complex, launching an insane amount of bombing attacks on the world. I'm sorry, but there's reasonable concerns to be very skeptical here, which everyone should be. All of this also is coordinated with protests that are happening in Washington, D.C., shutting down traffic and twerking and throwing glitter everywhere, littering. By the way, glitter is extremely bad for the environment, and just seeing these protesters block people from their commutes and litter and do this ritual strange mating chicken dance is a little bit perplexing, especially if you compare this movement to other protests like I've personally seen in Hong Kong, where there's a great emphasis on predominantly making sure that people could go along their day. And we have to understand that this fear mongering that we're doomed has been around for a very, very long time. And crying and fear is an effective way of propaganda, and sadly, I believe is being used to gain more power for the government to have over us, which I am definitely not a fan of. Being responsible for ourselves, cleaning up after ourselves, taking care of our environment is extremely important, but I do not trust the individuals that literally are behind and covered up the Jeffrey Epstein scandal to somehow be our saviors when the apocalypse doom is coming. No. I don't trust any of these individuals, and you shouldn't either. And this nicely segues us into the next story with the latest disturbing developments with Jeffrey Epstein, which we are finding out, according to a former Palm Beach police chief, that this convicted pedophile elite person that was friends with the Clintons and the Trumps was actually tipped off about the investigation against him in Florida and found every loophole to get away from being any form of justice from his egregious crimes, detailing how investigators would get search warrants for his home only to see it totally cleaned of all potential evidence that was named by his victims. And even when he was found guilty and given a slap on the wrist sentence, we were finding out when he was in his own private wing of the jail, which is unprecedented, and allowed to leave during the day, that even with all of that, he was still allowed 90 prison visits from a woman the police have identified as an underage rape victim of his. Just when it couldn't be more in your face. The Palm Beach Police Department is a criminal, inept, corrupt institution that facilitated pedophilia on the highest levels. This is criminality on the most disturbing extent, to where some people would even compare it to being demonic. I mean, my goodness, the level of criminality here is absolutely insane. And then we're supposed to trust police departments. We're supposed to rely on them for our protection, when essentially here they're running pedophile rings for Jeffrey Epstein, giving him a private jail, allowing underage sex victims to be visiting him over 90 times while he's in jail. I mean, holy cow, how more in your face could you just get? I mean, even El Chapo, who, by the way, was on Forbes' billionaires list, he can't even afford this level of FU money, this level of criminality, which makes you understand this is far more than just a case about a rich person getting away from his crimes. This is not about money. It's far more sinister than that. And again, the stories from the victims are very important here. Very conveniently, the mainstream media dropped their tagline in "Believe All Women" and has been previously promoting Jeffrey Epstein, and now, overall, their coverage, except for the Daily Mail and the Miami Herald, is absolutely a sham. Now, the Miami Herald just released an article a few days ago, even detailing how many of his victims were controlled, and when they were abused by him, they had essentially trapped and found it impossible to escape. There's other reports and allegations even involving medical corruption, not just police and political corruption in this case, as there are accusations against Jeffrey Epstein paying doctors and psychiatrists to prescribe tranquilizers and antidepressants to his victims, which would corroborate a lot of the accusations against Epstein with his victims. And now we have a major PR push by Prince Andrew to try to disassociate from Jeffrey Epstein, as the New York Post, which again should be questioned in their reporting here of Jeffrey Epstein very seriously, specifically with their sourcing and the information that they get. But according to the New York Post and according to the media publications that are running with this PR, I would call bullcrap story, allegedly to them, Prince Andrew conveniently had a quote bitter falling out with his previous close friend Jeffrey Epstein, which, by the way, the prince says he was not aware of any illegal or wrong action with, but conveniently the two buddies, the two pals, split after an argument in 2011. By the way, Epstein was a convicted pedophile in 2008, and how would Prince Andrew not know that? It doesn't make any sense at all. But again, this is anonymous sources from CNN. CNN's puppeteering this, so is the New York Post, that the two weren't friends since 2011. And again, this is based on anonymous sources that I call absolute lies on. And of course, there's many very serious accusations against Prince Andrew, with victims coming forward saying that they were trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein specifically for Prince Andrew. There are also many photos and disturbing videos showing Prince Andrew with very young women around him, and it's pretty clear that Prince Andrew, who by the way has been doing a lot of PR to try to cover up his very clear and disturbing connections to Jeffrey Epstein, this is on such a level that even the MI6, the British intelligence agency, according to the Times, is saying that they are worried that even Russia may have evidence linking Prince Andrew to very disturbing activities that could be used to exploit him. And again, this story absolutely should not be believed by face value, and to me is a PR attempt trying to clear Prince Andrew's name, which is a pretty desperate attempt. Very interestingly, Prince Andrew was also deemed as Trump's escort, as the two, of course, also go back, with this oddly pinned byline here by The Guardian saying the prince and the president will have a lot more to talk about than golf. Yeah, I bet so, Karen. Anyway, moving forward with more blunders from the U.S. empire and the U.S. presidency, we are going to give you the latest developments with American foreign policy, which, by the way, is on the side of Saudi Arabia and their oil fields. You know, the same Saudi Arabia that executes teenagers for trying to protest in their country. Yeah, that's the country we're fighting alongside and selling our latest technological military systems that failed to work. And according to NBC News, the problem to why the missile defense systems that the United States sold to Saudi Arabia didn't work on the recent oil attack was because it is the U.S. military excuses that they were working on long-range missiles and not short-range missiles. But yes, this still leaves as a major blunder and a major question to the incident at hand here that, of course, has the world on edge, as, of course, we are going towards the stage for the world to see the U.S.-Iran showdown that will soon happen at the UN General Assembly, as many war hawks, especially on Fox News, are advocating Donald Trump to, you know, just simply launch a war. That's literally what they're... look at the headline here by Fox News. General calls for military retaliation against Iran to prevent world recession. And of course, it's not just neocons, the mainstream media, but also Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, that just recently came out and said that Iran is totally to blame for this attack on Saudi oil, and that the UK would join military efforts against Iran, which is a very, very serious declaration. Boris Johnson has also called for a new nuclear deal with Iran, which Donald Trump, from Boris Johnson's comments, praised. But this leaves a lot of questions, because the nuclear deal that Donald Trump previously scrapped was, according to even many other experts in international foreign policy, was effective. It's also a very similar one that Donald Trump wants with North Korea that again, he scrapped with Iran. Now, of course, as we know, Donald Trump has not yet launched the military. He has, though, launched economic warfare with the increase of sanctions on Iran, which inevitably will hurt the innocent civilian population of that country, which the Iranians fired back on, calling, quote, desperate. Now, this is all on the heels of Iran joining Russia and China with military drills, which is going to be another very serious escalation in this kind of global diplomatic fighting that is happening on the world stage right now. And with China and Russia standing in the corner of Iran, this is an extremely serious situation that many people, especially the war hawks, especially pathetic people like Sean Hannity, are not taking very seriously, and they should. And diplomacy should be the answer, and so far the doors are closed on diplomacy. And according to some sources from the New York Times, Donald Trump wanted and already made the decision to attack Iran militarily. But he changed his mind 3 hours after making the decision, after saying he would attack Iran, within just 10 minutes from the airstrike, from the next war. And again, this is based on anonymous sources from the New York Times. Take that as you will. But from my own analysis and seeing the increase of troop movements to the Middle East, and with Donald Trump's very bipolar foreign policy, even previously bombing Syria, even continuing to escalate the operations that Barack Obama continued beforehand, that he promised he wouldn't, he is, and he's escalating those bombing runs all around the world. From my analysis, it's very clear that the situation will only get worse from here, and sadly won't be resolved anytime soon, most likely leading to a bigger escalation in October that will eventually lead to a conflict. So yeah, we have that to deal with. So that's the news for today, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I once again have this opportunity to do this research, to do this work for you, and if you made it this far, you help us out a lot. Just even the watch time, just even being here with us means the world to me. I thank you guys sincerely. That's why I try to end almost every single broadcast by saying, love you guys. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. No one would see this video if you wouldn't be sharing it. And I wouldn't be sitting here doing the work that I'm doing without you. Love you. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.